Iraqis continue to visit bin Laden in his new home in Afghanistan.
George Tenet's analysts had spent a year and a half of torturous investigation, torturous analysis, to see if there were ties between Al-Qaeda and Iraq. They found none.
Our conservative estimate is that Iraq today has a stockpile of between 100 and 500 tons of chemical weapons agent.
So the Secretary of State is telling us that our conservative estimate is that Iraq possesses between 100 and 500 tons of chemical weapons agent, enough to fill 16,000 warheads on the battlefield. Where are they? What happened to them? My suspicion is that this is not our conservative estimate, that this sounds very much to me like our neo-conservative estimate.
Iraqi denials of supporting terrorism take their place alongside the other Iraqi denials of weapons of mass destruction. It is all a web of lies.
It was a masterful performance, but none of it was true. Where are all these weapons? Where is all this VX? Where is all the anthrax?
Probably one of the low points in his long distinguished service to the nation.
The old weapons inspection process was a little more than a game.
They concealed, denied, deceived.
Return of inspectors would provide no assurance whatsoever.
To eliminate by inspection is, quite frankly, a fool's errand.
On the contrary, there's a great danger that it would provide false comfort that Saddam was somehow back in his box.
Reality is that between the original UNSCOM inspections and the UNMOVIC inspections, you destroyed, with those inspections, 90 to probably 95% of the Iraqi arsenal. The first Gulf War destroyed almost nothing. And, post-war U.S. battle damage assessments confirmed that.
The weapons inspectors were effective. They forced Saddam to get rid of this stuff. They had that country under control.
By 1998, at the latest, those inspectors had discovered most of the weapons of mass destruction, and the Iraqi programs at that point were essentially at an end.
Before the war in Iraq, the United Nations inspectors told us that Saddam Hussein did not have nuclear weapons capability.
Ironically, the major effect of the invasion of Iraq in terms of weapons of mass destruction has been to show that the inspectors were right all along.
The inspection regime worked. It was the most intrusive inspection regime in history, and it worked. And at the end of the day, that's another reason why we went to war for nothing.
These maniacs who are encouraging our enemies, weakening our troops' resolve, and confusing the American people.
Well, you shouldn't listen to these protests because they're obviously helping Saddam Hussein. Who would have guessed that you could build a massive international peace movement on the protection of Saddam Hussein?
The media is culpable for the misleading of the American public. They bought into the Bush administration's rhetoric.
They don't understand that there is moral violence and immoral violence. We used moral violence. God bless this president. He is truly a great man.
Reducing troop morale, confusing the American people, and emboldening our enemies. They are absolutely committing sedition or treason as far as I'm concerned. There's a huge difference between a personal opinion and an opinion which degrades and debases our military in a time of war. It's a disgrace.
I don't believe that mainstream media acted responsibly in regards to Iraq. I was belittled. I was called a traitor. I was called crazy. Paul Azan of CNN accused me of drinking Saddam Hussein's Kool-Aid for making accurate statements in response to aluminum tubes.
People out there accusing you of drinking Saddam Hussein's Kool-Aid.
If I'm an ideologue, then I'm a Republican ideologue. I'm actually a fairly conservative person who voted for George W. Bush. But I don't allow my ideology to get in the way of the facts and the reality of my duties and responsibilities as an American citizen.
It's a tendency, if you want to kill the message, to go after the messenger. If you can discredit the messenger, then you discredit the message. Or if you can make the story about the messenger, then people forget about the message.
And I think it's so unfair to try to silence debate and criticism by attacking those who say something with which you disagree.
The media is supposed to be the fourth estate, but they decided to completely climb in bed with the administration on this.
In a way, the administration constructed a box where, and that box had all the information that the administration wanted the media and the public and Congress to have.
What they would do is you'd have the Iraqi National Congress taking bogus defectors, the information from them, giving them to the Pentagon, and then the Iraqi National Congress then giving them to the journalists. And they said, if you don't believe us, the Iraqi National Congress, call up the Pentagon. So you had the circular reporting, and you had the New York Times admitting that it was using one source for all of its information on weapons of mass destruction. And it was, you know, self-affirming by going to the Pentagon, which put this stuff on paper.
It was a lot of exaggerations, partial information, sometimes the whole information, but on balance, a very one-sided view of Iraq's WMD program.
And a lot of these stories the journalists didn't want to look into because editors told them to run with. We're going to be supportive of the administration. It's the patriotic thing to do.
I think that there was, on the part of the media, too much of in a sense, getting into the upcoming war and not enough look at, do we really need to go?
There were some journalists out there raising the alarm bells, the Seymour Hirsches, the Walter Pincuses of the world. But unfortunately, those great investigative reporters, they're usually exiled when the heat is on, and it's only after the fact that they end up being praised and given the pats on the back.
The excitement was to make the case to go to war, to show that, and that was the controversy that the media loved, is, it was the titillation of a WMD hitting us, not the titillation of, or the conflict of attacking the administration.
Both the Washington Post and the New York Times had very conservative editors that supported the White House on this.
I didn't foresee all of this. I'd like to say, I was very prescient. I knew what the others in the intelligence community were saying. I didn't. And I'm one of the ones who also, I drank the Kool-Aid. But early on, I felt that there were some real dangers going into the war. And I tried to get an op-ed into various major newspapers, and the word kept coming back. Nobody wants to hear this because we're going to war.
States and our friends and allies will not live at the mercy of an outlaw regime that threatens the peace with weapons of mass murder.
His regime has an active program to acquire and develop nuclear weapons, and let there be no doubt about it.
We know for a fact that there are weapons there. There were a group of people who, for many years, had advocated going after Saddam Hussein, and they pushed this hard. And of course, raw intelligence data can be interpreted in a lot of different ways, as I'm sure experts have talked to you about. And so there were a group of people, I think, that were adamant that this was the right course to pursue.